The city was still dark when she walked into the wrong room. 5:47 in the morning, 44 floors above Park Avenue. She was carrying clean linens. She had done it every morning for 6 days. She assumed the room was empty because it always was this early, when the building was quiet and the light outside had not yet decided what kind of day it was going to be. She pushed the door open, crossed toward the window, and then she saw him. He was in the leather chair by the east-facing glass, a book open across his knee, the whole city spread out behind him, and the way it tends to spread out behind men who own things. His eyes were already on the door when she entered. She froze. He did not move. 10 seconds of silence. Neither of them made a sound. Then she started to apologize, something half-formed that began with the words, "I did not think," and he interrupted her. Not loudly. He had no reason to be loud. He said, "If you come into this room like that again, I will not be responsible for what happens next." She laughed. She actually laughed. Not because it was funny. Because she was terrified. Because nervous laughter was the last reflex she had left after 3 years of surviving things that should have broken her. He did not smile. He did not explain. He turned back to his book. She backed out, pulled the door closed, and stood in the hallway with her arms still full of folded linen that no one had needed. She thought he was talking about the intrusion. She thought he was joking. She had absolutely no idea he was talking about himself. And she had no idea what was already moving toward her from outside these walls and from inside them, set in motion by people who had been using her as a weapon long before she ever walked through this door. Stay with me. This is the story of what it costs to tell the truth when the wrong person hears it, what it takes to survive the system that was supposed to protect you. And what happens when the most guarded man in New York City decides, finally, without ceremony, that someone is worth every risk he has spent 12 years refusing to take. 6 days before the East Room. Let me take you back to where this began. Sloane Parrish was sitting on the edge of a narrow bed in a weekly rental in Queens, doing the kind of math that people do when the numbers are very bad. $214 in cash. A prepaid phone with 11 contacts, 7 of them her younger brother Owen, and a small leather notebook with dark green covers and corners worn soft from handling, holding 47 pages of handwritten documentation that had already cost her everything once and had not yet saved her. She had been, for 2 years, the private secretary to State Senator Gareth Vane. She had believed, in the specific way that capable, careful young women believe in systems, that doing your job well was protection enough. That evidence, presented through the right channels to the right people, would produce the right outcome. She had been wrong about every part of that. The financial transfers she had documented, the shell companies registered in Delaware and the Caymans, 3 federal contracts worth a combined $60 million, awarded to firms that should never have received them, awarded because someone had made it so. She had documented everything: dates, amounts, routing numbers, the name of the intermediary in Nassau. 47 pages of proof that would have ended Gareth Vane's career and likely sent him to federal prison. She submitted it on a Monday morning in March to his deputy director, a man named Riddle, who listened carefully, thanked her professionally, and presumably walked the folder directly to Gareth's office. By the following Thursday, she had been formally accused of embezzlement. Gareth's chief of staff, a man named Briggs, who had an exceptional talent for sincerity, testified against her with documents she could not explain and a timeline she could not disprove. The story ran on Friday. By Saturday, Gareth's communications team had reframed everything. Disturbed former employee, financial irregularities, a history of instability, a woman who could not be trusted. A judge dismissed the case 7 months later for insufficient evidence. By then, the word dismissed read, to anyone who searched her name online, as probably guilty but unprovable. She lost the job. She lost the apartment because her landlord did not want the association. She lost the 2 professional references she had spent years building. She lost, for a long time, her ability to sleep without the lights on. She kept the notebook. She did not entirely know why. Maybe because throwing it away felt like agreeing with him. Maybe because 47 pages of truth deserved to exist somewhere, even if the only person who believed them was the woman who had written them. Her younger brother Owen worked nights at a warehouse in Brooklyn and came over every Sunday, bringing groceries she had not asked for and a steady, quiet insistence that she was going to figure this out. She wrote down the dates of his visits in the notebook, along with everything else, because writing things down had become the closest thing she had to faith. The placement card arrived on a Tuesday morning, slipped under her door with no return address and no agency logo. Live-in estate coordinator, an address on Park Avenue, and at the bottom, 3 words that were simultaneously the most appealing and the most alarming thing she had read in months. No references required. She stood outside the building for 4 minutes. Glass and steel and 44 floors of someone else's money. A doorman who looked through her like she was weather. She went inside. Because $214 is what it is. Because Owen could not keep bringing groceries forever. Because the notebook needed somewhere dry to live. The man behind the lobby desk studied her with the specific attention of someone who has already formed a preliminary opinion and is now testing it. "Parish," he said. "Yes," she said. He looked at her for another beat, then said, dry as old wood, "You are either very brave or very tired." "Both," she said. Something almost moved across his face. "Good," he said. "Same thing around here. I am Price, Henderson Price. I run building operations. You run the household. Follow me." His name was Henderson Price. He had worked for Rafferty Cross for 19 years. He was efficient, perceptive, and she would discover much later at significant cost, human in ways she had not anticipated. She followed him into the elevator. The doors closed. The building rose around her, silent and certain and full of things she did not yet know. She was not, she told herself, afraid. She was just very tired. And tired, it turned out, was the most dangerous state she could be in. Because tired people make themselves small, and small people in certain worlds become invisible. And invisible people are very easy to use. The penthouse was extraordinary and almost entirely without warmth. Every surface chosen, every room maintained rather than inhabited. The kind of space that functions perfectly and feels nothing. There was one exception. At the far end of the east corridor, a door that Henderson did not open during the tour. He walked past it at the pace of someone who has long ago incorporated the avoidance into his routine, and said without stopping or looking at it, "That room maintains itself. You do not enter." She noted it in her notebook that evening. Day 1, East Room, off limits. No explanation given. The second day, she could not stop thinking about the placement card. Something about it had been wrong from the beginning. A texture missing, an absence where something should have been. She photographed it, ran a search on the agency name, and found a registration date of 6 weeks ago. 1 listed client, 1 completed placement. Her. She wrote the date and time in her notebook and kept working. The third day, the building's main line rang. Henderson took it in the other room. She heard him clearly through the wall say, "There is no coordinator here. You have the wrong building." He hung up. He did not write anything down. She wrote it down. On the 4th day, she found the listening device. She was cleaning the bathroom mirror when she felt, with the specific calibrated sensitivity of someone who has learned to read spaces for safety, a slight unevenness behind the frame. She found it in 40 seconds. Military grade, the size of a coat button, adhered with surgical precision to the back of the mirror casing. She stood still for a long moment. Then she thought, if I destroy it, whoever placed it knows I found it. If I move it, I keep my advantage. She moved it behind the radiator, still functional but positioned now to record nothing but the sound of old pipes and ambient air. She washed her hands, dried them, and wrote the discovery in the notebook with the exact time and exact placement. Someone was listening. She did not yet know who, but the device had not been placed by the building's owner. She understood that from the grade of the equipment and the placement method. This came from outside, and whoever placed it did not know she had found it. That was the only advantage she had. She intended to keep it. The 5th day, Owen did not answer her calls. Not the first, not the second, not the one at 8 or 10 or midnight, when she sat on the edge of the guest room bed and did the breathing exercise she had taught herself the year she first understood what it meant to be genuinely afraid. She had 11 contacts in her phone. 7 were Owen. The other 4 could not help her. She sat in the quiet and breathed. At 1 in the morning, Henderson knocked on her door. He stood in the hallway and said, "Your brother is fine. He is at a hotel in Jersey City. Do not ask me who arranged it." He closed the door before she could speak. She sat on the floor and did not move for a long time. She was not, she realized, relieved. Relief would have been clean. This was something colder. The specific discomfort of discovering that someone near you knows more about your life than you ever gave them access to. Someone had moved Owen. Someone had anticipated the threat before she had. She did not know whether that made her safer or more afraid. She picked up the notebook. She wrote down the time and Henderson's exact words. Then she thought, someone placed me here deliberately. The agency was false. My brother has been relocated without my knowledge. I am not hiding in this building. I have been placed in it. The question is by whom and for what. She kept writing, because the one thing she had carried out of Gareth Vane's world intact was this: the only defense against a powerful man's narrative is your own record. So she kept her record, every date, every word, every door. He came back from Zurich on a Thursday. She knew before she saw him. The building changed, a subtle atmospheric shift, the way pressure drops before weather arrives. Henderson moved with a different efficiency. The 2 men who usually held positions in the lobby reorganized themselves without being told. The elevator arrived from the lobby floor twice in 20 minutes without being called from above. He came through the kitchen on his way to the east corridor, coat still on, a folder under one arm. He moved through his own building the way a man moves through space he has fully inhabited for a long time, not performing authority, simply being it. He stopped when he saw her. She was at the counter. She turned. They looked at each other. He said one word, her last name. Parrish, just that, like a period at the end of a thought. "Mr. Cross?" she said. He looked at her for 3 seconds with the specific, unhurried assessment of a man who reads situations correctly on the first pass and rarely needs to revise. Then he continued toward the study. She turned back to the cabinet and thought, that man already knows something I have not told him. She observed him carefully over the following 3 days. He read every morning at 5:45 in the east room, door left slightly ajar. She could see from the hallway the spine of the book across his knee, Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. The copy was old. The spine had been cracked at 4 different points, meaning it had been read cover to cover at least that many times. He wrote in the margins. He ate standing at the kitchen counter, never at the table, never with anyone. He took calls in German and French and one other language she could not identify, and she had working knowledge of both German and French. He was never loud, never visibly uncertain. He moved through the world like a man who had long ago stopped needing it to cooperate. And he looked at her, twice, with the expression of someone reviewing a document they have already understood but want to verify. Then the 6th morning happened. She came to the east room to open the curtains, as she did every day. She had assumed he would be elsewhere by 6:30. She was wrong. She pushed open the door, crossed toward the window, and then caught in the edge of her vision the shape in the leather chair. He was there, book open, coffee on the side table, eyes already on her. The 10 seconds, the laugh she could not stop, the warning issued once, quietly, with a certainty that had nothing theatrical in it. If you come into this room like that again, I will not be responsible for what happens next. She backed out. She pulled the door closed and stood in the hallway with her back to the wall, heart working too fast, arms still full of linen. That evening, Henderson appeared beside her in the laundry room. He did not look at her when he spoke. Whatever he said this morning, Henderson said, he meant it, not as a rule. She asked what the difference was. Henderson was quiet for a moment. A rule, he said, is something you enforce after it is broken. A warning is something you issue when you would prefer the break never happen. He picked up his coffee cup. He does not warn people, he added. Usually he waits. Waits for what? She said. For them to do the thing he already knew they would do. Then he acts. He looked at her. You made him warn you. That is different. He left. She stood alone in the laundry room and thought about that for a long time. A man who issues warnings he does not issue to anyone else is a man who has already made a decision about the person he is warning. She did not yet know what the decision was. 3 days later, she was in her quarters at night, notebook open, running through everything she knew about the placement agency. When she reached into the jacket on the chair and found in the pocket a piece of paper she had not put there, folded once. 3 words in handwriting she did not recognize. We know. Stay. She sat very still. Then she put the paper beside the notebook. 2 possibilities. Either this was a threat, or it was the opposite. She thought about who in the building could have slipped something into her pocket without her noticing. She thought about the east room. She thought about the warning. And the next morning, she did not knock. She pushed the door open, crossed the room, and set the folded note on his desk. He looked at it, then at her. You found the device, he said. Day 4, she said. I moved it behind the radiator. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, sit down. Tell me why you are here, the real version. She sat and told him everything. She told him everything. And she told it the way you tell something when you are too tired to perform it. Just the facts laid flat in order. Gareth Vane, the documentation, the deputy director she had trusted, the charges, the trial, the dismissal that arrived 7 months too late to save anything. The Queen's rental and the $214 and the card under the door that she had known, somewhere quiet in herself, was not what it claimed to be. She put the notebook on his desk. He read it. All 47 pages. He turned each one with the same deliberate attention he gave everything. His face did not change. He did not comment or interrupt. But she watched his left hand, resting flat on the desk as he read. And somewhere around page 20 it closed. Slowly, into a stillness that was not relaxed. When he finished, he set the notebook down. "You have been carrying this for 2 years," he said. "Yes." The case was dismissed. "Insufficient evidence, technically," she said. "But my name still returns the original charge when searched. The dismissal is listed third. Who else knows you are here?" "No one I trust." He stood. He walked to the window, looked at the city below, Park Avenue at mid-morning, indifferent and expensive. He picked up a phone and made a call in German, a single sentence, and hung up. Then he turned around. "The agency that placed you," he said, "was registered by a shell company. That shell company has a parent company. That parent company is connected to an investment fund that has been attempting to acquire proprietary information about my operations for 18 months. A pause. "You were not sent here by the senator." He let the sentence settle. "You were sent here by his daughter, Petra Vane." The room was very quiet. She heard the logic of it land and felt it settle through her like cold water. Not Gareth. Gareth had not known she was in the building, not at first. Petra had engineered it. Petra had registered a false agency, identified Sloane Parrish as desperate and discredited and invisible, and placed her inside Rafferty Cross's walls as a source of intelligence. A tool. A pair of eyes in a building where she could not otherwise reach. "I was the weapon," Sloane said. "You were meant to be," he said. "You have not been." "Because you found out," she said. "Because on day 4, when you found a listening device behind your mirror, you moved it instead of destroying it," he said. "Destroying it was the instinct. Moving it was the thought. I have been watching how you work since you arrived. Petra Vane did not account for who you actually are." She sat with that. "What do you do now?" she asked. "With all of it? With me?" "That depends entirely," he said, "on what you want." It was the first time in 2 years that anyone had asked her that question directly and meant it as an invitation rather than a trap. She looked at the notebook on his desk. "I want Gareth Vane to answer for what he did," she said, "in public, in front of the people who chose to believe him instead of me. I want my name restored, and I want my brother safe." Rafferty nodded. "Once." "Then sit down," he said, "because your brother is about to need to be extracted from wherever Petra has put him, and after that, we are going to have a longer conversation about the notebook." 2 days later, it happened exactly as he had said it would. Owen stopped answering. Not one call, not one text. By 10 at night, nothing was delivering. She went to Rafferty's study, knocked twice, and said when he opened the door, "They have my brother." He looked at her for 1 second. Then he stepped back and said, "Come in." She told him about Owen. The warehouse job, the Sunday visits, the groceries he brought because he was the kind of person who expressed worry through action. Rafferty listened without interrupting once. When she finished, he picked up a phone she had never seen him use. He spoke for less than a minute. Then he set it down. 6 hours, he said. "Rest if you can." She could not rest. She went to the East Room, which had simply become the place she went when she needed to think. And she picked up the worn paperback from the side table. Meditations. She opened it to a dog-eared page. In the margin, in Rafferty's handwriting, someone had written, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." And below that, added later in the same ink, but a different pressure, "She did not." No name, no context. Just the weight of a sentence a person had needed to write and had written to no one. She read it twice. She sat in the chair that had been Della's and read it twice and understood, for the first time, why this room had been kept closed to everyone. At 4 in the morning, Rafferty appeared in the doorway. He looked at the book in her hands and said nothing about it. "Owen is in a hotel in Newark," he said. "He is unharmed. He is being managed by someone working for Petra, told to stay calm, told you will be in touch. We move him in the morning. You will not know the location until this is resolved. For his protection, not to withhold from you." "Okay," she said. He looked at her, sitting in Della's chair at 4 in the morning, book open, and he looked at her the way someone looks at something they are beginning to understand in a way they had not expected to. "Get some sleep," he said. She said she would. He turned to leave. She said, "Rafferty." He stopped. She had not used his name before. It felt like the right time. "Thank you," she said. He looked at her for a moment. Then he said, "Do not thank me for keeping a promise I made to myself." He left. She sat in the east room until the city started to lighten, and she thought, "I have been alone in this for 2 years. I am not right now alone." She did not know what to do with that, but she held it the way you hold something small in a dark room, not as a plan, as a fact. Things shifted, not dramatically, because nothing in this building happened dramatically. Everything moved the way the tide moves, consistently and without announcement, changing the shape of the shore so gradually you only notice when you look back and see how far the water has come. They talked in the mornings. It began because she started bringing 2 cups of coffee to the east room instead of 1. Not as a gesture, not as an invitation, just as a practical observation that he was always there. And there was always enough coffee. He accepted the 2nd cup without comment the first morning. The 2nd morning, he was the one who made both cups and set hers on the table before she arrived. Neither of them acknowledged this. He asked her 1 question per morning, the kind of question that was really an invitation. "What did you want to be before the secretary work? Do you remember the first time you understood that someone was lying to you? If you could have dinner with anyone from history, would you choose someone who would be kind or someone who would be honest?" She answered carefully at first. Then she noticed she was answering honestly. Then she could no longer tell the difference. She told him about the night she submitted the documentation to Gareth's deputy, how she had sat in a coffee shop on K Street afterward, completely certain that she had done the right thing and that the right thing would produce the right result. "I trusted the system," she said. Not Riddle specifically. The system. The idea that evidence goes to the right place and accountability follows. "And," he said, "the system works perfectly," she said, "for the people who built it." He looked at her for a long moment. "I have never trusted systems," he said. "I have only ever trusted people, and only after they showed me who they were." "And who have I shown you?" she asked. "Someone who moved a listening device instead of destroying it," he said. "Someone who went back to work the next morning. Someone who has been keeping a record for 2 years in the specific hope that truth eventually matters." He looked at his coffee cup. "Those are not the actions of someone who has given up. They are the actions of someone who refuses to." She did not know what to say. He did not seem to require her to say anything. One afternoon, she found him in the east room, standing in front of the photograph on the desk. A woman laughing, hair half out of its pin, caught in a moment of unguarded happiness. He heard her come in and did not turn. "Her name was Della," he said. "She died 12 years ago. I'd 12. She was ambushed in a situation arranged as a trap for me. She was there because of a decision I made. I arranged what followed." A pause. "I have not been able to forgive myself for the decision. I also have not been able to undo the arranging." She stood beside him. She did not say the things designed to make the speaker comfortable. She had been on the receiving end of those sentences enough to know what they actually said. She said, "Is that why the room?" She loved the light in here, he said. The angle of it in the morning. I have not been able to change it. I also have not been able to stay out of it. I think I come here to keep having the argument. What argument? She said. About whether what I built after her was worth the cost of what I lost. She looked at the photograph. At the woman laughing, frozen in a moment she never knew would be among her last. I do not think that is the argument, Sloane said quietly. He looked at her. I think the argument is whether the person who survived deserves to stop living like he did not. The room was very still. He looked at the photograph for a long time. Then he said, Henderson tells me you are the first person in 12 years he has wanted to warn me about. He said you warned him about me, she said. No, Rafferty said. He said I warned you. Which is different. He turned from the photograph and looked at her directly. I do not warn people I am not invested in. She held that. She sat down in Della's chair, slowly, carefully, the way you sit in something that belongs to someone else. He sat in his own chair across from her. The city moved below them, enormous and completely indifferent. They did not speak for a while, and the silence was not uncomfortable. That was the thing she kept coming back to. The silence was not something to fill. It was something to exist inside of. She had not sat in silence with another person and felt it as rest rather than danger in a very long time. That evening, Henderson made food and then disappeared to the far side of the building. The food was exceptional. Rafferty claimed he had made it. She did not believe him. They ate at the kitchen counter and talked about things that were not danger. A book she had read 4 times from the Queen's Public Library. A city in Bavaria he returned to every year for a reason he called habit, and she understood was grief. The specific quality of light in a place at 4 in the morning when you are the only person awake in it. She laughed at something he said. Real laughter, the kind that has no performance in it, the kind she had almost forgotten the texture of. He looked at her when she laughed. Not with surprise, with something quieter. The expression of a man being very careful with something that has become important to him. She looked away first. She thought, this is the part where I should be afraid. She was not afraid. She was, underneath everything, underneath all the vigilance and the years of being careful, something that felt dangerously close to safe. She did not know yet whether that was wisdom or the most dangerous thing she had allowed herself to feel in 2 years. She woke at 3 in the morning to a manila envelope under her door. Inside were photographs. Her and Rafferty at the kitchen counter. Shot through the window from the building across the street. Telephoto lens. Perfectly timed to look like exactly what Petra Vane needed them to look like. A typed note. 4 sentences. Withdraw from the building or we publish. You will be described as his kept woman. You will be presented as the troubled former employee who has attached herself to a known criminal. Nobody will believe the notebook. She sat on the floor and looked at the photographs. She looked at herself in them, standing at the counter, coffee in hand, face turned slightly toward him, expression open in a way she had not been aware of in the moment. She thought, they knew when to take this. They knew my schedule. Someone inside this building told them when I would be at that window. She picked up the notebook. She turned to a blank page. She wrote the date and the time and the full contents of the envelope, word for word. Then she went back to sleep. Because she was a woman who wrote things down instead of falling apart. And because whatever came next, she intended to face it with her record intact. The morning after that, she discovered who had given them her schedule. And when the name came up on the screen in front of her, she sat very still for a full minute, because the name belonged to someone she had started, against all her better instincts, to trust. She was not supposed to see the access logs. She had been asked to help digitize 3 years of building maintenance records, routine work that required access to the management interface, which shared its architecture with the building's movement and security logs. She was not looking for anything. She found it by paying attention. Her movement schedule, 23 entries across 3 weeks. Her approximate location in the building at specific times. When she was alone, when she was in common spaces, when she was near the East Room, when she was at the kitchen counter with Rafferty. Each entry was logged under one staff credential: Henderson Price. She sat very still for a full minute. She did not move. She did not close the laptop. She let the cold, specific weight of what she was looking at settle through her completely. Henderson had given Petra Vane her schedule. He had told them when to send the photographer. He had built the map that led to the photographs under her door. She did not allow herself to be surprised. She allowed herself instead to be very accurate. She wrote down every entry, every timestamp, every credential. She noted the date and time she had found it. Then she went to find Rafferty. She put the printed logs on his desk without speaking. He read them. He was very still for a very long time. Not the stillness of surprise. The stillness of a man absorbing information that confirms something he had sensed without being able to name. "Henderson has worked for me for 19 years, he said finally. "I know," she said. He was quiet again. Then he would have been approached by Petra's people early. If they had leverage over him, he would have had almost no way to refuse. He looked up. "Do you know what they used?" "I do not know the specifics," she said. But she was the daughter of a sitting senator. Henderson has a daughter in Portland, a grandson. Those are the kinds of things people with power use when they need compliance. "That does not make it acceptable," he said. "No," she said. "I am not asking you to accept it. I am giving you the most accurate version of how it happened. Because I have been on the receiving end of what happens when someone with leverage decides another person is the most convenient solution to their problem. It helps to know which kind of person you are dealing with." He pressed the intercom. "Price, my study, now." Then he looked at Sloane and said, "Stay or go. Your choice." She stayed. Henderson came in and saw the logs on the desk, and his face did the specific thing that faces do when they have been caught. Not surprise. The end of suspension. The release of something long held. Rafferty did not raise his voice. He never raised his voice. "You gave them her schedule," he said. "Yes," Henderson said. "You gave them the window and the timing for those photographs." "Yes." "Tell me why." Henderson stood straight and did not reach for excuses. "Petra's team had documentation about my daughter's immigration case, discrepancies that were discoverable by anyone who knew where to look. I was told they would remain undiscovered if I cooperated. I made a decision." He paused. It was the wrong one. Rafferty looked at him for a long moment. "You placed someone under my protection in danger," he said. "That is the line. It has always been the one line that holds everything else up. You have 19 years of understanding that line. And you crossed it." "I know," Henderson said. "You are not finished here," Rafferty said. "But you are no longer in my complete trust. That is earned back, slowly, over time, if at all. You will give me a full account of every contact with Petra's people. Every one. Starting now. And Henderson, The immigration matter with your daughter will be resolved through my attorneys. Not because you are owed it, because I do not conduct business through leverage. That is not what this house is." Henderson was very still. Then he looked at Sloane. "I am sorry," he said. "To you specifically, not as a formality." She looked at him for a long moment. "Tell him everything," she said, "all of it. That is where you start." He nodded, turned back to Rafferty, began. She stepped into the hallway and let the door fall most of the way closed. She stood there for a moment. And then, at 2 p.m, the news alert appeared on every screen in the building simultaneously. Senator Gareth Vane was holding a press briefing. She went to the living room, turned on the television. He stood at the podium in a dark suit, expression arranged with precision between concern and righteousness. He did not use her name. He said, "My former secretary." He described in measured, sorrowful language a young woman with documented behavioral irregularities who had become, after her dismissal for financial improprieties, increasingly fixated on him. He mentioned a legal matter now resolved, as though dismissal were something he had chosen to be charitable about rather than something a judge had ordered. He described her as someone in a vulnerable state who had become entangled with certain individuals of questionable reputation in the New York business community. He named Rafferty Cross by implication, not directly, because he was too precise for that. He expressed only compassion. He said that, out loud. Only compassion. She stood in front of the television and watched him do what he did best. Stand in public and make the truth sound like a woman's delusion. She did not move. Her hands were at her sides. Rafferty appeared in the doorway. He looked at the screen and then at her. "He is doing it again," she said. "Yes. In front of cameras. Yes. And this is the version people see first," she said. "Before anything else?" "Yes," he said. "It is." She looked at the screen for one more moment. Then she turned it off. And then her phone lit up. A tabloid notification. Audio released. Recordings from inside the building, taken in the first 3 days of her arrival, before she had found and moved the device. Her voice on the phone with Owen, stripped of everything around it. "I do not know who this man is, but I am staying as long as I can." Exactly what Gareth had implied. A woman with an agenda. A woman positioning herself. Her phone flooded with messages from people she had barely known, resurfacing to say they had seen the article and thought she should know. Which is the specific cruelty of observers who want proximity to the crisis without being accountable for it. She set the phone face down on the desk. She looked at the notebook. She looked at Rafferty. And she said, with absolute evenness in her voice and something barely held behind it, "They have everything now. The press conference and the audio and your name attached to mine and a criminal charge that reads as probable guilt. They have built a complete story, and the story says, I am exactly what he has always said I am." That story, Rafferty said, is 48 hours from being irrelevant. "A lot can happen in 48 hours, she said. "Yes." "You are certain about the prosecutor?" "She indicted a sitting governor on a case thinner than the notebook you compiled," he said. "Yes." She walked to the window. She looked at the city. She said, "Tell me this is different from every other time." He came to stand beside her. He did not touch her. He stood close enough that she could feel he was present. "I sent your notebook," he said, "to a federal prosecutor named Annalise Rook 3 weeks ago, through an attorney with no connection to me. The submission is clean. It cannot be traced. It cannot be challenged as coming from someone with an interest in the outcome." A pause. "I did this on day 8 of your employment. Before I knew you well. before I understood what the notebook had cost you to keep." She turned and looked at him. "Why?" she said. "Because 47 pages of documented truth deserve to exist somewhere other than the pocket of a woman who has to keep running," he said. "Because I have the resources to put that truth in front of someone who can act on it, and choosing not to do that seemed like a specific kind of failure I was not willing to commit." He paused. "And because you walked into my room at 5:47 in the morning with clean linens and a laugh that was clearly armor, and something in me decided you deserved better than what you had been given." The window held the city behind him. The city held everything else. She thought about 2 years of writing things down in the hope that truth eventually mattered. "I am not going to ask you to trust me," he said. "Trust is earned. But I am telling you that I am standing with you in this. Not because you are useful to me. Not because it is strategic. Because I have decided to. That is the only thing I can offer you that is not a calculation." She held that for a long time. Then she picked up the notebook. "Tell me what comes next," she said. "I want to be ready." Thursday morning, the Russell Senate Office Building in Washington. 10 o'clock. Gareth Vane's confirmation hearing. He had prepared for it with the rigor of a man who believes preparation is the same as safety. His communications team had briefed him on every possible angle, every person in that room. He had supporters in the gallery and colleagues positioned to speak well of him and, as he had always had, the specific advantage of a man whose narrative has been in place long enough to feel like settled fact. He had not prepared for Annalise Rook. At 10:14, with the cameras running and the gallery full, and his supporters arranged behind him in their good dark suits, the federal prosecutor's office unsealed the indictment. The charges appeared on every screen in the hearing room simultaneously. Financial fraud, conspiracy to defraud the federal government, abuse of public office, witness intimidation. And in paragraph 4, listed with dates and routing numbers that matched 47 pages of a dark green notebook, the embezzlement charges that had originally been filed against his former secretary, cross-referenced with federal banking records that told an entirely different story. The original documentation, the filing noted, had been received from a whistleblower source and independently verified over a period of 6 weeks. Gareth Vane's face, caught by 4 cameras in the room, did something specific. It did not go pale. It went still. The absolute stillness of a man who has rehearsed for everything except the truth arriving in public, on camera, in the exact room where he had expected to be celebrated. United States Marshals entered through the side door. His Chief of Staff Briggs was arrested simultaneously at the Capitol Hill office. He did not comply calmly. There was footage. It ran on a loop for 3 days. In the penthouse on Park Avenue, Sloan Parrish was sitting in the east-facing room. Rafferty had turned on the television, the only morning he would ever do so in that room, and had left her there. She sat in Della's chair and watched the hearing. She did not cry. She was not a person who cried when justice arrived. She went very quiet and very still, and felt in her chest the specific physical sensation of a weight that has been carried so long you forget it is there, finally beginning to lift. She watched Gareth's face on the screen. She watched the marshals approach. She watched the moment when he understood, fully and without any available redirect, that this was happening. That there was no counter-narrative, no communications team fast enough, no deputy director to send ahead of him. She thought about a Monday morning in March, sitting in a coffee shop on K Street, completely certain that evidence submitted through the right channels would produce the right result. She had been right. She had just been wrong about the timeline. She thought, I wrote every date, every word, every time someone closed a door in my face or looked through me like I was glass. I wrote it all down because the only defense against a powerful man's story is your own record. And somewhere in a federal proceeding, that record was now evidence. The civil filing against Petra Vane went through the same afternoon. Rafferty's legal team, appearing to have no connection to Rafferty Cross whatsoever, filed a conspiracy suit naming Petra Vane, her consulting firm, and 3 individuals associated with the false placement agency. The firm's accounts were frozen within 6 hours. 2 of Petra's clients issued public statements before the business day ended. Petra did not fight it. She had her father's lawyers. Her father was in federal custody. By 6 in the evening, she was at Kennedy Airport, boarding a flight to Lisbon. She did not look back. The tabloid issued a correction the following morning. The recordings had been provided with manipulated context, and the outlet had failed to verify source intent before publication. The correction ran on page 4. The original story had been front page. She read the correction 3 times. It existed. It was in print. Her name in print, attached to the truth. Henderson came to her door that evening. He stood in the hallway and did not come in. He said, I told myself I was being pragmatic, that cooperating was the only way through. I was wrong. I was afraid, and afraid people dress cowardice up as practicality because it is easier to carry. What I almost let happen to you is something I am going to have to live with for a long time. I am sorry. To you, specifically. She looked at him. Do not do it again, she said. No, he said. And find a way to fix your daughter's situation through the proper channels. Take the leverage away from anyone who might try to use it again. He looked at her. Then he said yes. She closed the door. She sat on the edge of the bed and felt the exhaustion of having survived something that had been trying to undo her in its own particular way for a very long time. She was tired. She was relieved. She was sad in the complicated way. You are sad when damage has been repaired, and you are still living with the accounting of what it cost. She was also something else, something she had almost forgotten the shape of. She was safe, not hiding, not managing, not writing down the date and time of every threat in case she needed it later. Just safe. She went to find Rafferty. He was in the east room, in his chair, the book closed for once across his knee, looking at the city through the window. She came in. She sat in Della's chair. It is done, she said. Yes. Your attorney will ensure the prosecutor has everything she needs. The attorney who submitted the notebook has no further involvement, he said. Annalise Rook does not need more than what she has. She nodded. They were quiet for a moment. You said you wanted him to answer for it in public, he said, in front of the people who chose to believe him instead of you. Yes. Was this sufficient? She looked at the city. It was everything, she said quietly. I did not know it was possible for it to be this complete. He looked at her. You also said you wanted to stop waiting for the moment someone decides you are more trouble than you are worth. She looked back at him. I decided that in week 1, he said. The answer was no. The room was very quiet. The city outside was enormous and indifferent, and somehow, right now, very small. She said, Rafferty? Yes. What do you want? Now that this is done. What do you actually want? He was quiet for a long time. I want, he said finally, in a voice that was very even and very precise and cost him something she could hear underneath the evenness. I want to stop reading that margin note I wrote 12 years ago. I want the East Room to be a room again, instead of an argument I keep losing. I want someone sitting in that chair across from me who is not a ghost." She held that. "I am not a ghost," she said. "No," he said. "You are not." And for the first time in the entire conversation, something that was not quite a smile settled on his face. She looked at it for a moment. Then she said, "Good." 3 months later, Owen Parrish had a job. Not one arranged for him. Not one handed down. He had applied to a logistics coordination role at a Brooklyn facility through the proper channels, interviewed with a manager who had no idea who his sister was, and had gotten it because he was good at it. He called Sloan every Tuesday. He had started dating someone. He brought groceries when he visited on Sundays, old habit. The federal trial against Gareth Vane was scheduled to begin in the spring. Sloan was listed in the case filings as the original whistleblower's source. Not my former secretary. Not a troubled former employee. Not a woman whose credibility had been dismantled to protect a man who never earned the protection. Her name, correctly attributed, meaning the right thing. On a Sunday morning in October, 6 months after the night in the East Room when Rafferty Cross had told her what he wanted, Sloan Parrish was at the kitchen counter with a cup of coffee. The city outside was doing what it does in October, cool and bright, and somehow both ending and beginning at the same time. He set a small black box on the counter beside her coffee cup. He did not get down on one knee. He did not make a speech. He did not perform the moment for anyone. He said, "I am not good at needing people. You have noticed. I am asking you to let me get better at it." She looked at the box. She opened it. A thin, dark band with a single stone, deep blue, the color of the city at 4 in the morning before the light changes. Not decorative, not showy. The ring of someone who knew exactly who they were giving it to. She turned it over in her hands. "Is this the part where I say yes?" she said. "That is the part, yes." She put it on her own finger. She did not wait for him to put it there. She put it on herself, because she was a woman who had been taking care of things herself for a long time, and was not at this particular moment interested in changing that. "Yes," she said. He picked up his coffee. She picked up hers. Outside, the city moved through its Sunday at the usual indifferent speed. 44 floors below, Park Avenue was doing what it always did, expensive and certain of itself, and completely unaware of what had just happened 2 floors from the roof. The wedding was on the second Sunday in October, in the East Room, because there was nowhere else that made sense. That was where it had started, where the warning had been issued and the laugh had followed, and the truth had begun to emerge from the place she had been keeping it. The room held its light the way it always had, the east-facing windows doing exactly what Della had loved them for, filling the space with a particular quality of morning that makes everything inside it feel permanent. Owen stood near the window, with his arms crossed and his jaw tight, which was his version of trying not to cry. Henderson stood in the back of the room, very still, expression carefully controlled, eyes not quite as dry as he would have preferred. The officiant was a judge Sloan had vetted herself. She had her notebook. The ceremony was brief and exact. They both said what they meant and did not elaborate, because they were both people who understood that precision was its own form of sincerity. When it was done, he looked at her the way he had been looking at her, she realized, since the morning she had come into his room, and laughed when she should have been afraid. Like she was something worth the time it took to understand. She looked back. She did not look away first. This time, neither of them did. And now the lesson. Because every story worth telling has one. Not a rule, a lesson. The kind you carry. Epictetus wrote, "Make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens. Sloane Parrish had power over one thing during the worst years of her life. Not her job, not her reputation, not the system that had been turned against her or the man who had wielded it. She had power over the notebook, the record, the discipline of writing it down even when it felt futile, even when it felt like the act of a woman arguing with the dark. That discipline was not futile. It was the reason a federal prosecutor had what she needed to build a case. It was the reason a man with resources chose to put that truth in front of justice. It was the reason, on a Sunday morning in a room full of morning light, she stood in front of someone who had chosen her and chose him back. Gareth Vane had her charged with embezzlement because the alternative was accountability. He had her discredited because the alternative was the truth. He had made her small and invisible and unbelievable because a woman no one believes cannot hurt him. He was wrong. A woman no one believes who keeps writing anyway is not a woman he can stop. Petra Vane had placed her inside those walls like a piece on a board, a desperate woman with no references and nowhere to go, useful and disposable. She had not accounted for the difference between a woman who has been broken and a woman who has been tested. Those are not the same thing. They are never the same thing. And Rafferty Cross, who had spent 12 years building an empire and protecting it from everything, including himself, discovered what all genuinely powerful people eventually discover if they are fortunate enough to discover it at all. That control is not strength. That the bravest thing you can do when you have built walls high enough to be safe is to open the door. He opened the door. She walked through it. Not because she had nowhere else to go. Because she had finally, for the first time in a very long time, found somewhere she wanted to stay. The warning in the East Room was never about the room. It was about a man who had spent 12 years guarding the only place that still felt like grief, and a woman who walked into it at 5:47 in the morning and did not run when he warned her. She stayed. He stayed. And the truth, which had been documented and dismissed and buried and ignored and weaponized and eventually, finally heard, arrived, on time, in full, in a federal hearing room with cameras running. It always does, eventually. If you write it down, if you stay, if you keep walking through the door, even when someone tells you not to. The warning was not a threat. It was the beginning of a story that was always going to end here. In a room full of light, with two people who had chosen each other, and a small dark notebook full of truth, sitting on a desk beside a photograph of a woman who had loved this light. She was still there, in all the ways that matter. She was still there. If you are still here with me right now, at this very moment, past the 60-minute mark, I want you to know something. That is not an accident. Something in this story touched you. Maybe it was Sloane, the way she kept writing even when no one believed her. Maybe it was Rafferty, the man who had built every wall possible around himself and still chose to open the door. Or maybe it was something quieter than that. Maybe it was just the feeling of watching someone finally be seen. Epictetus wrote something that has stayed with me for a long time. He said, "It is not what happens to you, but how you respond to it that matters." Sloane did not respond with rage. She did not beg. She picked up a notebook and she kept the record one page at a time, because she understood, even on the worst days, the truth does not expire. It only waits. And I think that is the thing we forget when life is hardest. That survival is not about being loud. Sometimes it is just about staying, writing it down, not giving the wrong people the satisfaction of your silence. If this story gave you something today, a little warmth, a little fire, a reminder that you deserve to be chosen too. Then please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Hit that like button, subscribe so you never miss a story, and leave a comment below. Tell me what moved you most. I read every single one, and I will see you in the next story, my friend. This story is a work of fiction created entirely for entertainment purposes. All characters, names, events, locations, and situations presented in this video are products of the imagination and do not represent any real individuals, organizations, or actual events. Sloane Parish, Rafferty Cross, Gareth Vane, Petra Vane, and all other characters are fictional, and any resemblance to real persons, living or deceased, is purely coincidental. This channel produces original cinematic storytelling in the tradition of dramatic fiction, designed to entertain, inspire emotional connection, and explore themes of resilience, justice, and human dignity. No claims of factual reporting, journalism, or documentary accuracy are made or implied. The philosophical references attributed to Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus are real historical quotations used in an educational and inspirational context within a fictional narrative framework. All content is original, written and produced by this channel. Viewer discretion is advised for mature dramatic themes. We are committed to transparent, honest storytelling that respects our audience and the YouTube community guidelines fully.